the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. This is Marla. Today we are creating a card using Zig Zag Zoom. This is a three-piece die set and it has three different zigzag patterns, a large one, a medium-sized one, and then a very thin one. I'll be using all three for my pattern today. We're pairing it with the Festive Delights die set, and this is a birthday cake. So you can mix and match this as well. We have a large cake and then a smaller cake. You could use one or both. And then we have accessory pieces. So there's some strawberries and flowers and cherries. We have some candles and some glow for the back of the candles, a dollop of whipped cream, and then the leaves for the flowers. These are going to mix and match beautifully for a Rainbow Delight birthday card. I'm so excited about this card and I hope that you love it as much as I do. I am starting out with one of the larger zigzag patterns. This is the largest of the three, and I have Pink Fresh Studio Fruit Punch ink. I am blending that on with a blending brush. In the upper left-hand corner, I didn't realize that I had cut this out, but I did ink blend the large one, the very first one, using Picked Raspberry, which is also a Pink Fresh Studio ink. So I'm going to be using these beautiful, vibrant Pink Fresh Studio inks on my card today. I do know that Crafty Meraki does have some of the inks available in the store if you wanted to take a look at those. I just think that they have beautiful, vibrant colors. And then, of course, they have their new muted tones that they came out with, I think, maybe about a year ago. I'm using a Picket Fence Studio pouncing brush on this one. I love how this works out. You just pounce, you put the ink on the pouncer, and then you just kind of pounce it onto the die cut, and it comes out beautifully. You don't have to brush it back and forth. Just do a little bit of a pouncing motion. You'll notice how dark the ink colors are. These are going to dry back significantly. We're still going to have that bright, vibrant background, but it does dry back and it's not going to be quite as dark, quite as moody and intense. I started out with one pattern in mind, and we're going to start out that way. I left the footage in so that you can see there are multiple ways, so many different ways that you can use this. These would work vertically, I believe, on an slimline card or a you could use these for 5x7 cards. I'm using it on an A2 card today. This is Seaside ink that I'm adding, and then the final color is going to be Candied Violet. But the versatility of these dies, the different patterns that you can get. In fact, if you go to the Crafty Meraki Instagram account, and I will have that linked in the description box, there was a card that made by Michi. I can't remember her first name, I apologize, but she created this card using the zigzag, and she made an argyle pattern. It's just a great card. So it's just different ways that you can use these. So I have everything inked up, and I have a 4¼ by 5½ inch card panel. I knew I wanted to cut this card panel down to 4 by 5¼ inches. I probably could have started the pattern at the top, but I ended up just starting 1/4 of the way down, or maybe 1/8 of the way down. Here's the pattern I thought I'd start with. I thought that I would add 2 of the largest zigzag patterns. We're going in rainbow order, if you didn't catch that. So we have the red and the orange, and then I put the white thin strip. I have 2 of the medium zigzag patterns in the yellow and green. And then, of course, I have the white in between, and we were going to finish up the pattern with 2 of the large ones. I was going to repeat this, except for now you could see that the middle size zigzag was going to be the next in line. So I would do 2 middle ones and then the white strip and 2 large ones. But I changed my mind mid through. So I decided to go with this pattern. I really like it. I went with the Pink Fresh Studio Picked Raspberry. So this is that pink for my quote unquote red. And then I'm going to use the thin strip of the white and I'm going to add that in between. So I'm going to add the white strip in between each of the patterns instead of moving on to the next, because you can see that I did one in each of the colors. So I have a full set of rainbow in the large and a full set of rainbow colors in the medium. And then I have my white strips that have been cut as well. I decided to go ahead, instead of moving on to the next color in the rainbow, I'm going to repeat with the mid-size zigzag in between the large and the white. In between, I'm using that wet glue, and you saw that I had a piece of paper. If I get too much glue on these, because I am butting them up against each other, I don't want any of that glue to ooze out. So if I feel like I get too much of that wet glue, which you definitely are going to have a better chance of getting things aligned nicely if you use a wet glue, I go ahead and tap it off on that scrap piece of paper so that I just don't get that mess of the glue as I'm pushing these die pieces together. So you can see that they do align beautifully. I tried to kind of keep if you look on the left and the right side, for the most part, I kind of kept them lined up the same way. There's definitely more on the right-hand side that's hanging off, and those pieces I'm going to be able to use on another card because they're significant in size. I went ahead and skipped ahead so you didn't have to watch me put all of these zigzag pieces together, but you get the gist of what I'm doing here. I'm going to finish off with the blue, the white pieces in between, and then finally we'll finish off with the purple. And again, you can see just how much that dried back, that ink dried back, and now we have this beautiful, vibrant primary color rainbow. Instead of the red and orange, of course, I went with the pink and the fruit punch, which is just a little twist on the red and the orange. But I really like this color combination. I am going to color up the birthday cake the same way. I will use both layers. And again, that's called Festive Delight. So I cut out all of my die pieces using accent opaque 80-pound cardstock. I did that for the zigzag pattern as well as for the cake. And then I used the ink blending, the same colors on the cake as I used on my zigzag pattern, except I did it in reverse. And so we'll talk about that when we start assembling that birthday cake here in just a few minutes. But first, we need to get this last piece aligned. And then we're going to bring in our Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, and we are going to first trim off the overhang. And this guillotine trimmer works perfect for this. Then I'll trim off the right side. I'm going to throw those pieces away. And as I mentioned, when I flip this around, I have all of those beautiful pieces that I'm going to be able to use on another card. So I'm going to take those and set those aside. Now I want to trim down this panel, and you can see that obviously the bottom has a little more white space than the top. So I'm going to start at the top of my card. I like to err on the side of caution, so I do end up cutting it a little bit longer than what I need, just to make sure that I'm not cutting too much off, because obviously I can't glue that white back on. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the right length from the top and the bottom. I cut a little bit off the top. I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'll flip it over and I'll cut maybe about 1/8 of an inch off the bottom. Nope, I guess I don't need to. I thought maybe I was going to cut the bottom. So now I have that matching, and I'm going to cut this down to 4 inches. So it's 5 1/4 by 4 inches. I'm going to put this on an A2 top folding card base that's going to be white. So it's going to stand out just a little bit. So here you can see that reverse coloring. I started off with the picked raspberry for the bottom layer of my cake. I'm going to mix up my rainbow a little bit. So I'm going to add the yellow to that bottom layer. I'll add the purple to the layer of the blue cake. Again, having that little bit of a reverse rainbow, mixing up those colors just a little bit so that they're not butted up against themselves on the background. It's going to allow my cake to stand out just a little bit more. So we'll assemble this cake. I did color up the flowers with the orange or the fruit punch, and then I colored the leaves for the flowers with the grassy knoll to finish out the rainbow of colors. We have that little bit of dollop of whipped cream that we'll add to the top of the cake, and then we'll add that to our white cake stand. And that white cake stand is just going to, again, tie in the white that's in the background of our card. I like to incorporate the same colors throughout my cards. So, of course, keeping the cake stand white, you could certainly do it in a foiled, if you wanted it to be like a gold foil or maybe a silver cake stand, that would work. But I thought because of the primary colors that the white really just helped those vibrant colors stand out even more. So there we have what it's going to look like. I'm going to start assembling the flowers. Now I do need to take the cake off the background. I'm just kind of doing a dry fitting right here, making sure I know where I want my flowers to be placed. If I were to glue it while it was on that background, I am a klutz, so I do know that I would get glue on that background, rearranging my flowers, and so I choose to just take everything off and again err on the side of caution. I'm going to add the centers to the flowers. So what I did is I took, or no, I'm adding the leaves to the flowers, but I did for the centers use the little circle dies that were included in the die set. And then I want the front flower, so the flower that's going to be in the forefront, I want it to be popped up, and then I'll tuck the other flower flush against the cake behind it. So I'm using these small little glue dots. I'll add some wet glue to these glue dots so I have a little bit of wiggle room. That way, if I don't like the placement of the flower on the cake, I can pick it up, and these glue dots are super sticky, so I didn't want to risk tearing my cardstock trying to lift this up if I needed to. A, a little trick though, if you do end up with something glued in a place that you really don't like it, especially if you're using foam tape, so that you don't rip your paper, you can take, if you have one of those Ranger heat tools, or I guess you could do it with your embossing gum, but I definitely would hold it back a little bit more. You can heat the back side of your panel, and that's going to allow that adhesive to melt a little bit, and so you can lift them off a little bit easier that way. All right, so our cake is done. And that's what it's going to look like, but we're going to add a little bit of dimension. So I have some foam tape. This isn't really thick foam tape. I just like the thickness of this. I get it on Amazon, and I'm going to add it to the back of my panel before I place it onto my card front. And then I will use this same double-sided foam tape to add some dimension to the back of the cake, so you can see it there on the back of the cake. I'm going to lay this down, make sure I have it in the right place before I actually press on it. And once I get it placed where I want it, I will just put a little bit of pressure on it to make sure that it adheres nicely. The sentiment, I used a sentiment from my stash, so I went ahead and stamped happy birthday using the fruit punch ink, and then I used a strip die from my stash to cut out the sentiment, I added a strip of 1/8 inch foam tape to the back of my sentiment. I'm adding that wet glue. Sentiments, getting things straight is not a strong suit of mine, so I do err on the side of caution again with that wet glue so that I have a little bit of wiggle room. And once I get my sentiment on, that's going to complete my card for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this look at the Zig Zag Zoom. It's a great little die set to create your own backgrounds, lots of color combinations, lots of patterns that you can create. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for watching.